everyone. Welcome back to Linux Weekly, daily Wednesday, where we sit back, relax, take that midweek break, talk about some of the fun things going on in the world of Linux, open source, and anything else that we find interesting. That was Jill Bryant, who was regaling us with tales of beating up bullies in school. And as you might know, I'm old man Vin, just kind of hanging out. We're doing our things. I get a package before the show started.
Yeah, you did.
I did. It was filled with lots.
You got to show it off.
This is where you got to be careful. You got to make sure you're. And it was filled with a bunch of brown paper. I was very excited. I was looking forward to it. I'm like, yes, finally, I can have brown paper. It was very well wrapped. I had to go and get science scissors in order to open it. Because I didn't want to use razor blades.
Damage it.
Yeah, this is what finally showed up. I've been stalking for one of these for quite some time. These are very uncommon. I hate to break this to you kids. This is what a professional sound card looks like. It doesn't blink. It doesn't have gaudy, oversized capacitors on it or anything like that. And more importantly, on the business end, it really doesn't have what you would consider standard audio connectors. So yeah, I'm going to be playing. I'm going to feed this to Jackbox maybe this afternoon, but definitely in the upcoming weeks for an interfacing Linux, because you know what?
Nice.
I've done 2 USB audio interfaces, and I've taken those for the team, Jill. Like, oh,
yeah, you sure have.
I'm going to do these, and just because somebody had to. And Unfa did one for the Scarlett. Oh yeah. 2i2, I think, Gen 3. So go check out his channel. He did a good job on that, and outside of that, I've installed Router OS 7 on the Microtech router, so if anything explodes in the network, we'll just blame Estonia for that one, and working on an OBS guide for multi-track audio to kind of simplify that for people getting into recording and streaming. And if you ever had that issue when you get done recording, like just a great thing, and you go back to listen to it, and like the game audio is too loud and you can't hear yourself, or you can't hear the game audio at all, or if you're recording something like, just 2 people talking, let's say it's Vin and Jill, we're talking and one person's too quiet, too loud. If that's just in one audio file, there's not much you can do. But I'm going to show you with this one easy trick how to fix that super easy in post. Now, Jill, you were driving like a mad person yesterday.
Yeah, I had such a great time playing Trackmania Stadium 2 on our practice stream yesterday because, well, I am improving. At least now I finish all the maps, and I even placed a few times, not in the top 5, but at least in the top 10.
Are you kidding me, man? You immediately started talking smack when you beat Nova, and you're like, what? Get down, scrub.
Yeah, I was nice. I beat a couple people on a couple of the maps. I was so happy because I've been coming in last these last few weeks, so it's nice to have victories.
You've been practicing though, and that's what we're doing. If you're unfamiliar with it, we have a Filthy Casuals thing for Trackmania 2 Stadium. We got a Linux server that I set up. And we do practicing from Tuesday through Friday. And Friday, we put everything to the test with a little bit of a points match. That's going to be going down at 7:30 p.m. this Friday. Everyone is welcome. It's open for our patrons and our Twitch subs. We got 20 spots. It's always going to, I'm not going to say forever because somebody's going to bring up that, like, how many kilobytes of RAM is more than you'll ever need. But I want to keep it to around 20 people. And I think we'll have 2 spots left open. So if that's your thing, check out the Trackmanias channel in our Discord for all the information. And I do want to point out, if you're listening, new month, we're being responsible. So we're going to be rotating the server password. So I got to come up with the brand new, fresh 80s television show.
New old 80s show. Yeah. How about A-Team? No.
Oh, maybe. So, Jill, you broke the story. Yes. You're going to tell everybody the final. We're going to put this to rest. We now know who is responsible.
Yes.
Who Satoshi
for
Nakamoto
Bitcoin is. Yeah. So there was an article put out recently that asked, could Linux creator Linus Torvalds be Satoshi Nakamoto, the father of Bitcoin? Now, honestly, this has been actually speculated for years. But what has happened recently was Linus, at least apparently this article says, Linus recently modified a single line in the Linux kernel which says, name equal I am Satoshi. So is Linus joking with us, as he often does, or is this a confession? And honestly, Linus is actually a really great candidate for I am your father of the most famous cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. After all, he created the world's most used operating system in the world, Linux, and one of the world's most used distributed version control systems, Git. And a lot of people have speculated that Git may have spawned blockchain. But since this article released, there has been another one released that I think is a more reliable source that Ben will tell you about.
How dare you? How dare you? Reliable? There's nothing more reliable than a crypto blog. All jokes aside, expecting a crypto blog to really understand, I don't know, the basics of Git, kind of a big ask. I understand that. No, what's his name? Over at ZDNet, Stephen Von Nichols. He did something that was completely out of left field. He asked Linus, he's like, yo, are you Satoshi? And Linus he says, you know what? I'm afraid that's just a jokester taking advantage of how GitHub works. I mean, it shares Git objects between different repositories, so you can use the SHA-1 name of an object to specify something you did in your own tree, then use my repository as the web name and make it look like your object is in my tree. So no, Torvalds is not the owner of a huge stash of original Bitcoins. Aww.
Although if he was, you couldn't say. So there's that.
Before I even got it out, Jill, I was like, oh, that's not going to stop the conspiracy theorists. They just opened up a fresh pack of red yarn and started making lines on their wall. And they're like, oh, so no, that's what you say. Yeah. Yeah. So either way, well, what do you think about that? I mean, even if Linus on his deathbed, he's like, it was really me. Psych. Like, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Who knows, right?
Good play.
Yeah.
Now, since we're smashing rumors and things that have been going around the internet, Dak wrote in, that's one thing you could do, a Patreon or a Twitch sub. We got a channel on our Discord and we're like, hey, you want to talk about this? You can drop in show suggestions. I'm not Englishing very well, and it's all my fault. This showed up, and Universal Audio, they make high-end audio interfaces. You see the picture there for audio listening. You see some rack gear and some smaller gear. And there's been a petition going around because they want some Linux support. And you know what? I wouldn't mind it. As of right now, none of the Universal Audio equipment provides driver software support for Linux OS. True. Yeah. Now, you might be thinking, but what about the recently released Universal Audio Volt series? They do work on Linux because, again, they're glorified sound cards. They're USB audio interfaces. They have a class compliant mode, which we all have the strangest of bedfellows to thank for that, Apple. Because Apple said, if you want something to ever work with an iPad or an iPhone, it needs to be completely USB class compliant. You don't get to install drivers. And everyone grumbled and Apple went, we're Apple. What are you going to do? And so everybody started making devices and that's why we can kind of just plug them in and make them work. Now, this all starts from a representative from Universal Audio who came in and on a fan forum, they're listed as official UA rep. And they said, hey, hypothetically, if we had 10,000 people that said, hey, we would like UAD support. And, I went reading through this post. And even the UAD rep said, man, this is just a fun little exercise. I thought this would be good for a laugh. And it kind of is. It was fun to read through this. And they even point out in the forum thread, you're thinking about these UAD interfaces. They're about $1,000 for the low end. The ones they're talking about, these are Thunderbolt interfaces. And, like I said, the cheap stuff's not being discussed. That works under Linux. Thanks, Apple. But I don't like how he handled it, because he was just saying this is a laugh. And later he goes on to clarify multiple times. He's like, don't bother with this petition. This is what he's trying to say without saying it. Oh. Even to the point of saying, we're only interested in, if somebody's going to file a petition, we're only interested from hearing from people who own UAD audio interfaces. Like randos on the internet signing a petition mean nothing to us. So there is that. And, I went digging around. And this official representative is, his name's Drew. He's a marketing rep at UAD. The first line of people that you're going to run into when approaching a company. And you're like, hey, can we work together, maybe develop some drivers? And you're like, no, Linux, bad, rawr, and go smash things and run out. However, I ran across a post from Paul. I always love reading stuff from Paul. Paul is one of the creators of Jack. He's the creator of Outdoor. You might have heard some of these things. Ooh. But he hits back with this, just kind of remembering the old days, because he was reading through this forum post as well. And it's like, yeah, this kind of reminds me of Motu, Mark of the Unicorn, way back in the day when the Linux community walked in like, hey, we'd like to write some drivers for you. And they literally referred to Linux users as, I quote, dirty little hippies, and sneered at me.
Aww. Oh, boy. They obviously aren't listening to the open source community.
They don't care. They don't have to, because, now, ironically, like later on, like these days you can buy Motu and class compliant devices. You can plug them in. They're going to work. They're not going to be a problem. Motu gets around a lot of this stuff, and I would recommend something like the higher end Motu stuff as well, because they have been really smart. It's just coincidence that this works, because all of their AVB series and the new ultralights have Wi-Fi and Ethernet web interface that you can just plug directly into, and you don't need any special software to get a hold of that. But he left out something in the Motu story that I just want to bring up real quick. That attitude from Motu back in 2002 was the reason that Motu's entire product stack was reverse engineered thoroughly. To this day. Now, I'm talking to the UAD folks. To this day, that has hurt Motu's sales. Why? Because Motu no longer gets to decide when a product is obsolete. They quit making Mac drivers. They quit making Windows drivers. We got open source drivers. We can make these things work as long as we need. So keep that in mind. Do keep that in mind. Yeah. And more importantly, support manufacturers that have official Linux support, like this guy. This guy,
absolutely.
Official Linux drivers. RME. Well, this is a digigram if you're wondering. And RME, they straight up, they've been supporting Linux for 20 plus years. Jill, you signed the petition. Oh, you're like, I don't care.
Yeah, I did. I didn't realize it was not a joke. And, and this is horrible that they wouldn't even, recognize this petition as something important, because if you get thousands of signatures, that should say something to the company. Hey, there are Linux users who would like to use your products.
They're not worried about no dirty little hippies are going to buy some UADs.
Yeah. That will change as soon as one of the production companies starts using Linux more for audio, like in the film industry and television. That it's starting to happen.
Well, the problem with that is this is what they're using. They're not using
the other brands. Yeah.
But you're 100% correct. This is, you'll see a lot of Linux development, like just pop up especially when a customer walks in, like, yo, I need 500, 600 seats with this. By the way, running Linux. I'm like, okay, we'll make that work. and we'll make it happen. So, as online petitions, and I get where UAD is coming from, but yeah, it's with the audio manufacturers, interface manufacturers, this attitude. It's sad not to have seen it change all these years later. It is still the get away, you dirty hippies. And Paul brings up a really good point later on in, a couple of posts down where he's saying it still boggles him that like as much control, like this locked in ecosystem that everybody wants to make with their plugins and their DAW, just have, I'm thinking like Pro Tools and stuff like that. Like, why haven't they latched on to Linux being something that they can mutate however they want to? Like they can build their own system. They won't be reliant on Redmond or Cupertino. Even Valve is like, you know what? We probably want to move our gaming stuff over to Hi Steam Deck. So yeah, maybe audio will catch up. But Mars, David Bowie has a laptop.
Yeah. So, U.S. and British-based Linux hardware vendor Juno Computers recently launched their highest-end gaming and content creation laptop yet, the Mars 15. This is a beast. It is the Mars 15 is an Ubuntu Linux 20.04 LTS powered laptop with very high-end AMD Ryzen CPUs and NVIDIA RTX GPUs, which is wonderful. And it comes in two models, and the base model starts out with an AMD Ryzen 7 processor, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3060 graphics card, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 512 gigabyte SSD NVMe at $2,150. And, that's kind of comparable to other high-end laptops from other Linux manufacturers. So, honestly, that is just the normal price point for, these specs. And so they also have you can also pick an AMD Ryzen 9 processor, an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3070 GPU, and up to 64 gigs of RAM, and a 2 terabyte SSD NVMe at $3,146. Now, again, these are normal prices for a workstation grade laptop. It's basically a laptop that is a portable workstation. And it's pretty sweet, actually. It has a 15.6-inch HD matte display with a 240 hertz refresh rate. So good for gaming as well.
I find this because you could say it's a little, it's kind of chunky, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Maybe
it is.
not
But it has an Ethernet port like you were having, of course.
This is where I'm going because I saw the profile shot of this. Yeah, this is not a thin and light. Do not confuse this with an ultra portable. It's got gills on the side, and on the other side I'm looking at a full size, which is good to see, Jill. You're right about that. It's good to see a full size Ethernet port. But for that size comparison, you see how much distance is on top and below a full size Ethernet port. That thing reminds me of this Dell business laptop I used to have to carry around with me on airplanes all the time that weighed 1 billion pounds. So I think this is like what you were saying, a portable workstation. This is
it really is.
Yeah, a luggable, modern day luggable.
It's actually thicker than my Asus Republic of Gamers 17.3-inch laptop that's 10 years old.
5.95 pounds. You need a workout carrying it around. You get 2. That's what you should do. Buy 2. You don't want to.
Yeah, it is less pounds. Yeah, actually, my Asus RG is almost 8 pounds. So this is much lighter. Thank you, Juno.
I guess one thing I will say is we were looking this up before we went live. Is it's only available with 2004 Ubuntu 2004 LTS.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but having different options. But as I always say, step 1, you get a PC from anyone, just wipe the drive and install whatever you want on it. So, but I'm pretty sure that support, when you call Juno up and they're like, on your Arch install, and they're like, so yes, you gotta lie to them like you do on regular tech support when you're calling up for internet issues. Like, yes, I've rebooted the router. Sure. because you got to work through the script. So keep that in mind. Now, this is kind of neat. This is
cool.
A minimum viable computer for $15. And that does, then you're like, but then you see a picture of it.
I want this.
Then you see a picture of it. You're like, all right, yes, 100% I want one of these. Like a portable terminal is what we're looking at. And tell me about this keyboard, because that thing is nice. It's on both sides. It's like the old phones. Remember when we hadn't figured out that touch type?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I like it. It's got the split space bar, which is really nice. And this, that was the first thing that caught my eye, was that really nice keyboard. And but it's very tiny, but it's good for, people with small hands. But actually the keys are spaced apart, Vin, so that would be good for you too.
Yeah. Full-size USB-A port, SD card, USB-C. I mean, that's going to be for charging. But a basic schematic laid out. I mean, yeah, 100%. We're talking about 48 keys of membrane fury.
Yeah.
What's it got under the hood though? It's got the all-winner F1 C1100
all-winner
SoC. Yeah, 32 megs of RAM, 2.3-inch screen. It's small, but it still looks so neat. Now, this is where things get a little bit sideways. Does it really cost 15 wet, stinky cashes?
Yeah.
The answer to the big question. And if you could put an order in for 10,000 of each of the things, yes.
Yeah, it is speculation, because you don't quite know until, depending on how many orders.
Theoretically, right. I mean, this is kind of, just going to put another, like, hey, 10,000 people want to get these. We can do it for like $14. I didn't have time. I wanted to do because the complete parts list is listed here. I wanted to see what it would cost to, do a small run, like 10 or 15. I'm guessing it would be under $100. I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But
it plays Doom.
Yeah. It can run Doom. Chocolate Doom is actually a default package and build root for this thing.
Yeah. So I think it's just so cool to have, basically this is a Linux terminal in your pocket. And, a lot of these little devices are usually wanting to put, a full GUI on them and on the little screen that are low powered. But this is actually intended just for terminal and coders and script writers and those of us who love Linux and like to stay in the terminal. So I want this to happen. So the fact that they put this out there, maybe someone else will copy it and actually put it in production. Because it is open source.
It is slick. Gamatron, yes, that's what it reminds me of. This thing's an N-Gage. You could probably make one of these
that's it.
With a hollowed out N-Gage, but don't record that and put it on YouTube, because the type of people that collect N-Gages will show up at your house. It will be nasty. It'll be all teeth and nails. FX Boy, yes, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. Portable terminal. You got it right there. And like having something like that, if I got to type a lot and I got to deal with something, like plugging into a box, it's so much better, because, I know. What are you thinking? Like, but Vin, just install Tmux or whatever you want on your Android device. Tap, 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 tap. Oh, how do I disable swipe
exactly.
on this thing?
Yeah.
Special.
To have that real tactile keyboard.
Right.
And it has USB support, which is wonderful. So
and GPIO breakouts. So
yeah.
If you
a terminal Raspberry Pi, essentially, with a keyboard.
That's what I went looking for, is does something like this exist for a Pi Zero? And I couldn't find anything with a keyboard. I mean, I found some things, but it looked like stuff old man Vin would make with this first gen MakerBot printer, like some super chunky cases. I'm like, I wouldn't want to. This looks like something you'd put in your pocket and actually take out to show people.
Absolutely.
So
and with a functional keyboard. I have seen the Raspberry Pis that have the little miniature keyboards on the top hat.
We covered that one that was like a Pi 4 that had the slide out. Here's my thing.
Yes.
Do they make mechanical switches that like that long? Maybe.
Yeah.
You think little tiny, you could like a portable Anoyatron. You could
mod it. Mod it to be clicky keys. Yes,
super,
absolutely.
Super clicky keys.
We can make
could play
them
a game to see
brown
who
or
could
reds
do
or
that
blues.
the longest. Yeah, before someone slaps it out of your hand and you're like, yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
So there we go. There we go. Hey, speaking of pies, we got to talk about that. Before we do that, if you like what we do, you want to support us, head over to linuxgamecast.com. We got a support button. You mouse over it. There's support things. There's magical things like our Patreon. We'd really like it if you can hang out with us there. We got merch, PayPal. We got wish zones for the studio. Jill's got one. Pedro's got one. Jordan's got one. We even have cryptocurrency. If you're worried about like, hey, man, what do I do with this cryptocurrency now that it's crashed? I will spend it on studio equipment. Done.
Yes.
Now,
we've got lots of new patrons. Yeah, we sure do. So we got George, and we got Yannick, who we've been playing Trackmania with, and Phil 80, also who came over because of Trackmania. So, and Wimpy's World. They're from Wimpy's World. Martin Wimpress.
We've been having
the culprit.
We've been having a good time with that, and it's kind of interesting. Just I started that because it's a fun game. It's a simple game. There's up, down, left, right, and go and stop buttons, and it runs on a calculator because it's a game from 2013. It still looks the business if you got the graphics.
It
up
looks
on
nice.
It. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can have our own servers, which I've set up. And the problem was the only people left playing the game are just crazy good at this. And the maps on those servers reflect that to even, I consider myself moderately okay at the, Trackmania series. I get on those servers. I quit. I'm like, God, it can't, these are just hard. They've reached the point of being hard for the sake of being hard. That's where they're at. And like, what happened to the fun tracks? So I've dug out some fun tracks and we change out the tracks each and every week. And it's great having people show up and experiencing it. But you got something in the post.
Yeah, I sure did. So Gamatron gifted me this cute pink plush penguin unicorn. It's a penguicorn. It's got a little horn and it's got a little rainbow mane. She got this for me from my Amazon wish zone. Thank you so much, Gamatron. Amazon. Thank you, Gamatron. I love it.
Banana.
And she and she gave me is going to have me read this nice note. It says, "Hi, Jill. I'm finally in a place to be able to get you something from your wish list. I know she's going to a good home from Gamatron." Aw, thank you so much, Gamatron. She's so sweet. She will go right next to my other pink penguins.
Do you know what make it even sweeter?
The one Pedro got me.
If it was,
and my other patrons.
If it was just filled, I don't know, with bees.
Bees?
Yeah.
No, I don't want it to sting me. It's soft and fluffy, and it feels good to the touch.
All right.
You don't want. And this one apparently can fly because it's a penguicorn.
Don't do drugs, kids. Thank you, Gamatron. For that, also George, Yannick, and Philo 8. That's how we do this thing. We have our business model is, hey, we were just going to do it. And I try to do a bunch of educational stuff for Linux, content production, gaming, and all that other stuff. Gaming's just get the kids. But we have a fun community. And we've been doing it for about a decade. And we just kind of put the stuff out. And if you like it, you can kick us a buck. That's kind of brilliant. We got some bonus things for patrons. Like we got an extra hour of content that we do, a pre-production show if you're interested in that kind of stuff. And this is just the middle of the show. This show's usually about an hour and a half, 2 hours long, and we put that in podcast format, the live and uncut series, as a thank you. And I'll have a little sneak peek. It's not really a sneak peek. I'll tell you what I use it for. I'm like, spot all my typos and all the other things I mess up in videos before they go live to the general population. I put those up on Patreon and get everyone a sneak peek. I don't know what I call it, depending what kind of mood I'm in, so you can kind of look over it. And I'll be doing that with the OBS and our list sound card whenever that comes up. I'll probably post some Discord, sync your Patreon, or if you're Twitch sub, sync that to your Discord, and you can come hop in. Our Land of scum and villainy. Yeah, it's just a bad
Aw.
place, Jill. It's horrible. No,
Oh.
it's very...
I don't think I'm full of scum and villainy.
No, our Jill, that's our Discord. It's just...
Yeah. That's true. No.
It's not. We could probably have one of the most
I
chill,
know.
active Discords. And
They're awesome.
yeah,
I love it.
it's a great, it's
Love
a
our group.
great source of entertainment and just a bunch of good people in there. Now, continuing with my knitted food product.
Oh, yes. We have a knitted pizza. Oh, that's very cute. It's a kawaii knitted pizza, like my kawaii penguin corn.
Next to a bottle of Ken's Steakhouse American flavor, aka
Oh,
ranch.
yeah. Actually, the Ken's brand has good ranch. So that's a pizza pie, Vin. A stuffed pizza pie.
That's a knitted piece of pie, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, speaking of this pie, some pies are 32-bit, but fortunately, our long national nightmare is over. Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit is finally a thing. Thank
Yes.
you.
Woohoo.
Thank you. 64-bit pie, it's been out for, for a while. I mean, quite a long time, actually, but it's always been in testing form, so it's used at your own risk, and sometimes that would come back and bite you, but unfortunately, you cannot have 64-bit pie with your Pi 1, 2, or 3, or the original 0. That's not going to be a thing, but
Yeah.
64-bit's official, so you can make use of that 8 gig without that little funky hack, which is kind of neat. There's a few gotchas that they point out in this post. All this is going to be in the show notes, but one of the big ones that they wanted to make everyone know, because if you were using like streaming services, what is it? What is that thing called? What is it? Widevine CDM? Yeah.
Widevine.
Yeah. That's 32-bit only, so they got some instructions like here's how you can change it back so you can watch your Disney Plus or whatever type of nonsense that you're watching that,
Netflix.
because your Pi is your media server, which I'm sure somebody's going to write in next week. That's great. I will love to read about it because I'm fascinated with that type of stuff. But I played with a 64-bit beta, and I would always run into like a gotcha. Like I have one work Pi that runs Bitfocus Companion, which powers the Stream Deck, which communicates with Threadripper over the network to control OBS. And I'm like, yeah, it's Debian 64-bit. Let's slap that guy on there. And I went to set up Bitfocus Companion, and it's like, nope, I'm constructed from the ground up 32-bit, and you're going to have to jump through all these hoops to manage this thing. And I'm just going to install 32-bit because I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
So getting the nudge in the right direction, and see a bunch of projects moving over to 64-bit. Why? Because 64 is a bigger number than 32, therefore it is better. End of discussion.
Yeah. So, the Raspberry Pi Foundation honestly has continued to build their 32-bit Raspberry Pi OS to maximize compatibility between devices and to avoid customer confusion. So that's why, it's been in beta for a while, but now they're finally putting it out because they realize now we've got more powerful products that can take advantage of 64-bit. And even, I've run 64-bit Ubuntu, Manjaro, and Kali Linux on my Raspberry Pi 400 without a hitch. And I'm so happy that we're now going to have the official release of Raspberry Pi OS 64-bit. So it's about time. Woohoo!
I hope it's a smoother transition than when our first x86 64 from AMD came out.
Yeah.
Those days, because of course, I was a lot younger, and it's like 64-bit. I'm installing that. Why? Because it's a larger number. And I was running 64-bit Linux. It was CentOS. Not CentOS.
It was
Fedora Core 3 or something like that.
Yeah, it was 3 or 4. Yeah.
And which was great. Linux installed it, and I installed everything. And then I tried to play a video. Then I realized all the codecs were an M player. This is how long ago it was. Everything was 32. There's no backwards compatibility. So if Flash didn't work, I know Flash was still back then. And hopefully this transition is going to be a bit smoother. And for those of you using Pis as desktops, because I know they do exist. Yes, Justin, trust me, 16-year-old Vin, a billion years ago with the Nintendo 64 thought for sure we would have 128-bit, because remember when it was all about bits? Consoles.
Oh, yes.
Floating around.
Yeah, well, in 1995, we had a DEC Alpha that was 64-bit, and then they came out with the 128-bit. And then before they went under, they were going to put out a 256-bit processor. Where is it? I want it now.
Like the whole idea of 64-bit, especially in my young years, always having Sun products around, like 64-bit has been around since the 90s.
Yeah, Sparks.
Saber and all the fun stuff. Now everything's 64-bit, and the only people that are buying Itaniums are YouTubers. So it's kind of
as a trip down memory lane, I still have my Itanium.
Well, I mean, those are neat. I mean, I wanted an Itanium to play around. But then again, I mean, for the same reason that I want like a RISC-V to play around, I mean, I'd love to have IBM.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hi, IBM. If you're listening, I would like a Power 9 motherboard and CPU to play around with.
Yeah.
I would do lots of videos on that. But
oh, yeah, that would be great.
I can't justify dropping 10 grand for something to play with.
No. I do have a Power 5 and a Power 7 in my collection.
There we go. Hey, if you want to tell us about your collection, head over to our contact form at linuxgamecast.com, where it says contact. I know there's a connection there. We got some topics. Just go ahead, select LWDW. We'd love to hear from you. Give us a name, email, subject, drop us a message, and we might, just might, read it on this show. Tell us.
Yes.
Send me some love backing my support for stuffed animals being filled with bees.
Oh.
They'll make lovely noises.
Finn doesn't like cuddly animals. He wants stingy ones.
Hey, I didn't say I said bees on the inside, man. It's like a back massager, but with more bees.
But so when you touch it, then they poke out because they want to get out of there, so they need to poke you.
Maybe they could be happy bees.
Yeah. Yes, bumblebees. I love bumblebees.
Man, carpenter bees are dope. Here's a quick aside before I roll the credits, man, because I always end up having one or two every year in the spring on the upstairs deck where it has wood around the top. They'll burrow in, and I leave them alone because I found out, one, they don't mess with people. They're just the big fat, like, doing their thing. And I'm like, that's my kind of bee. I aspire to be that kind of bee. And the other thing I learned after going to Google, they're highly territorial.
Yes.
So any other insect that gets within that vicinity, they will chase it off.
Mm-hmm.
There.
Absolutely.
Bet
even
you
hornets.
Didn't expect to learn that. All right. We're going to roll some credits. Thanks for showing up. We'll do a little bit of a post show.
Love you all, LGC fam.
Buttons. There
Yay. Thank you, our wonderful patrons. Gosh, thank you again. Thanks again, Gamatron, for my penguicorn plush penguin. And thank you too. We got FX Boy in chat. We got Justin. We got Oil of Hope. We've got Steve Husband. We got Strider in there. We got lots of wonderful people who are awesome patrons. Giving their hard-earned cash to us.
I don't know, man. Maybe it wasn't hard-earned. Maybe, just maybe. They held up a house with a stuffed animal filled with bees. Yeah.
We'll
see you next week, beautiful people.
Love you all.
Bye-bye.